I didn't stop her. She stood in our hallway, a leather bag slung over her shoulder like it weighed nothing. Her lips were painted, her heels clicked too confidently on the hardwood, and her scent, vanilla and something synthetic, lingered like a warning I couldn't decode. "I'll be gone for 4 days," she said without turning. "You'll manage without me." She didn't ask. Clara never asked. I stood there like an idiot, one hand in the pocket of my slacks, the other gripping the back of a chair too hard. My mouth was dry. I'd rehearsed at least 6 different sentences in my head, ones that started with "wait" or "can we talk?" or even something as cowardly as "do you really have to go?" None of them made it past my lips. "Daniel's waiting outside," she added. Then she turned and finally met my eyes. "You remember him, my childhood friend." I remembered Daniel, tall, blonde, always too familiar when he hugged her. The kind of man who spoke in quiet confidence and acted like he belonged in every room, even mine. Clara smiled then, not the smile she used for me. It was colder, distant. And when she closed the door behind her, it was like someone pressed pause on my world. I stood in that silence for a long time. The ticking of the kitchen clock mocked me. She was going on a trip. With him. For 4 days. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe in the woman I married 5 years ago, who used to fall asleep on the couch next to me, barefoot and tired from building our lives together. I wanted to believe that her laugh hadn't changed, that her texts hadn't grown shorter, that her eyes hadn't started scanning past me as though I were just another shadow in the room. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't just being paranoid. The signs had been there. The late nights, the client dinners that never ended before midnight. The way she flinched when I touched her back in the morning, like it was unfamiliar. My phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "Don't forget the documents for the escrow transfer. We'll talk about the company when I get back." Right. The company. She wanted to take it over temporarily, she'd said, just while I took a break. Clara insisted I needed time to clear my head. "You've been stressed lately," she said 2 weeks ago. "I'll keep things steady for you." And I agreed, signed half the documents. The rest were sitting in my desk drawer. I should never have trusted her with that. Not now. But I did. Because part of me still hoped I was wrong. That this wasn't betrayal. Just a rough patch. That if I showed her I still trusted her, she'd see it and come back. Stupid. I walked into the office, my office, and stared at the framed photos on the bookshelf. Us, on our wedding day. Her in white, me in navy. Her parents in the background, smiling like they approved of the future they thought we'd build. Now, they barely returned my calls. I sat down and stared at the wall. 4 days. Clara had taken trips before. Business ones, conferences, spa weekends. But this was different. She had taken Daniel, and I had let her go. I hadn't always been this passive. There was a time when I had fire in my voice, when people leaned forward when I spoke at board meetings, when Clara used to look at me like I could change the world, or at least hers. Back then, the company had been our dream. We started it together out of a cramped co-working space in Boston. I handled the clients and strategy. She handled operations. We joked we were a perfect team, the architect and the builder. But the cracks began early. The first time I saw it was in year 2 during a holiday dinner with investors. One of them, a man in his 60s with too much cologne and too little subtlety, complimented Clara's vision and stability. And she didn't deflect. She smiled. She let it sink in. That night she told me, "You know, it wouldn't kill you to let someone else take credit once in a while." I laughed, thought she was joking. She wasn't. Over time, those comments grew sharper. You get too emotional with decisions. Maybe you're not cut out for long-term growth. You don't delegate because you don't trust anyone. She called it honesty. I called it erosion. Still, I ignored it. Because love isn't logic. It's momentum. And we had plenty of that. Our wedding was small. Clara didn't want the spectacle. "I hate fake smiling," she'd said. We got married at a lake house. Her dress was ivory silk. My vows were from the heart. Hers felt edited. But it wasn't until year 4, when Daniel came back into her life, that everything started to unravel. He showed up out of nowhere, said he'd moved back east. Clara invited him over for dinner like it was no big deal. "He's part of my past," she said. "You're my future." But he didn't act like a man with boundaries, and she didn't act like a married woman. I'd catch her laughing at his texts, the kind of laugh she hadn't used on me in months. "Don't be jealous," she told me once, looking me dead in the eye. "It's unattractive." The funny thing about manipulation is how silent it is. Clara never screamed. She never made ultimatums. But she made you question your own instincts until you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize yourself, like with the company. The suggestion to hand her control came after a week of silent treatment and carefully crafted concern. "I'm just saying, maybe you need rest," she said, brushing her fingers over my shoulder. "You've been stressed. You're making mistakes. Let me manage things until you bounce back." She kissed my forehead like I was a child, and I signed. That was 2 weeks ago. Now she was with Daniel, on some beach or mountaintop, while I sat in the same chair for hours, replaying everything. Even my assistant, Olivia, had noticed. "You okay, sir?" she'd ask before leaving. "You look like you haven't slept." I hadn't. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure what I wanted anymore, to win her back, or to watch it all burn. Clara returned on the 4th evening. No text, no call. Just the soft click of the front door opening like she lived in a world where nothing had changed. I was in the kitchen, drinking coffee I didn't want. The cup had gone cold, but I held it like it could steady my hands. She walked in wearing a beige trench coat and black boots. No suitcase in sight, just a purse and a thin smile. "I didn't wake you, did I?" she asked, glancing at the clock. "It's 7:30, I said. "I'm awake." She looked at me as though I'd said something offensive. Then she shrugged off the coat and hung it up, like it was any other Thursday evening. "Trip was fine," she said before I could ask. "Daniel sends his regards." I stared at her. She didn't elaborate. She just walked past me, opened the fridge, and took out a bottle of water. No apology, no explanation, just silence. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked. The question came out lower than I expected. My throat burned when I said it. Clara froze for half a second, then turned slowly. Her face didn't crack. "Are we doing this?" she said. "Really? I just want to know." She took a long sip from the bottle. "You want to know, or you want to accuse?" "Answer the question." She looked at me the way people look at stray dogs, something pitiful and slightly irritating. "Adam," she said, walking toward the stairs. "Grow up." That was her answer. I stood in that kitchen for 10 more minutes before I moved. I didn't follow her. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the mug against the wall, though every cell in my body begged me to. Instead, I went to my office and opened the drawer. The second batch of documents was still there, the ones that would transfer the remaining executive control of the company to Clara. I hadn't signed them yet. My lawyer had warned me weeks ago. "It's not just paperwork," he said. "You're giving her the keys to everything." At the time, I told him I trusted her, that it was temporary. Now those papers looked like cyanide. I put them back. The next day, Clara was in the kitchen when I came down, hair tied, blazer sharp, phone in one hand. "I'll be at the office most of the day," she said without looking up. "You should try calling Roger about the rebrand strategy." "I thought you wanted to handle that," I said. She glanced up. "I thought you were taking time off." That was her way of pushing me further out of the company, inch by inch, until I was a guest in the business I'd bled for. But I wasn't ready to disappear. Later that afternoon, I walked into the office building that still had my name etched in the glass wall. Olivia looked up, surprised. "Mr. Turner, we weren't expecting—" "I know," I said. "I just need my space." She stood up. "Actually, Clara said the executive conference room was being repurposed." "For what?" She hesitated. "Her new private workspace." Of course it was. I walked past Olivia without another word. The old conference room, the one where Clara and I had pitched to venture capitalists, fought over budgets, celebrated our first client, was stripped. A single, sleek desk sat at the center. Clara's nameplate gleamed on the door. I closed it quietly and went to the other side of the building. My side, or what used to be. Half the team was gone. New faces, unfamiliar names. This wasn't a company anymore. It was a palace. And Clara had crowned herself queen while I was too busy mourning to notice the coronation. I stepped outside, walked down the block, and leaned against a brick wall. The air was cold. My jacket wasn't enough. Neither was the resolve I thought I'd rebuilt. My phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. "You okay? You don't look like yourself. Let me know if I can help." I stared at the screen. Someone noticed. The morning after Clara's return, I walked into the kitchen to find the ownership transfer papers sitting on the counter. Not in my drawer, not locked away where I had left them. Just there, bold, white, clean, next to the French press and a plate of half-eaten toast. I stared at them like they were radioactive. Clara stood near the stove, her back to me, her voice calm as she flipped through her emails. "Roger said the vendor meeting's confirmed for tomorrow. I'll take that." My fingers curled. "You went through my office?" I asked, voice low. She didn't turn around. "You said you were too tired to handle things. I was helping." "Helping?" I repeated, numb. She finally turned, holding her coffee. Her expression was neutral, too neutral. "I think it's time to make things official," she said, nodding at the papers. "It's only fair, considering I'm managing everything anyway." I didn't respond. "You want things to work between us, right?" she added, her tone dangerously soft. "Then you need to trust me." There it was again, the language of guilt, of rewriting betrayal as responsibility. Clara was never the villain in her version of events, just the efficient one. "I'll think about it," I said. Her eyes hardened just a fraction. "Don't take too long. The board needs clarity." That was new. The board. Clara had started looping them in, behind my back. I didn't know how far she'd gone, how many had been turned. Most of them liked her. She was polished, calm, always knew how to say the right thing at the right time. And I had been absent, disoriented, angry. She was playing chess. I was still figuring out what pieces were even on the board. That afternoon, I asked Olivia to bring me everything she could find about the last 2 weeks of operations. She hesitated, but nodded. "Send it to my personal email," I said. "Not the company server." She understood. Her eyes said so. By evening, I was sitting in my office going through files. A pattern started to emerge. Clara hadn't just assumed responsibility. She'd restructured teams, ended 3 vendor contracts, and funneled cash into a consulting group with a vague name, R&D Advisors, Inc. The address? A co-working space downtown. I Googled it, nothing concrete, no listed clients, no history. Then I checked public registration records. Owner, Daniel Lang. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just an affair. It was a takeover. They were building a shadow entity, draining my company from within. Slowly enough that no one noticed. Quietly enough that I didn't have proof. Just instincts and a paper trail that looked clean on the surface. Clara's genius wasn't in deception. It was in plausible deniability. I stared at the monitor, fury rising like acid in my throat. Then I heard her heels outside my door. "Working late?" she asked, peeking in. "Looking over numbers," I said. "Some things don't add up." She walked in, calm as ever, holding a glass of wine. "Don't overthink it," she said. "That's how mistakes happen." "I know what Daniel is," I said sharply. "And I know what you're doing." She smiled faintly, took a sip. "What you think you know," she corrected. "But you're tired. Maybe not seeing things clearly." I stood up. "Don't gaslight me, Clara." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Big word. Funny coming from someone who hasn't signed the papers yet. Silence pulsed between us. "You're destroying everything we built," I said. "No," she replied coldly. "I'm saving it from you." She turned and walked out, glass in hand. Unbothered, unrushed. And for the first time, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt angry. Clara and I now lived in the same house like strangers bound by an unspoken ceasefire. There were no fights, no apologies, just silence. The kind that weighs on the walls, the kind that eats you alive slower than shouting ever could. I'd wake before her most mornings, sit in the kitchen, sip bitter black coffee, stare at the empty chair across from me. Sometimes she'd come down. Sometimes she wouldn't. When she did, it was brief. A nod, a text typed mid-step, a going in early mumbled as she closed the door behind her. No eye contact, no questions, no warmth. We had become a failed negotiation pretending to be a marriage. But if she noticed me watching, tracking, analyzing, she didn't show it. She was too busy playing CEO. Inside the company, Clara moved like a scalpel. Precise, quiet, surgical. She reshaped the org chart, consolidated communications under her assistant, eliminated the product team's direct access to me. Even the internal email structure had shifted. All messages from leadership were now sent from her. I wasn't just being edged out. I was being erased. I tried to reach out to key partners. One of them, Marcus Langley, a longtime ally, finally returned my call. "I thought you stepped back, Adam," he said. "Clara said you needed recovery time. I didn't want to intrude." Recovery time. She had framed my silence as weakness, illness, a liability. "She doesn't speak for me," I said. "Then speak louder," he replied before hanging up. I started showing up more often, not to fight, not yet, just to be seen. The team was confused. They whispered when I passed. Their gazes dropped, unsure whether I was still in charge or just a relic no one had the guts to fire. Clara didn't acknowledge me when I entered rooms. She was always in the middle of something. A phone call, a strategy session, a casual chat with Daniel, who had somehow become an informal advisor. He was in the office now, often, unofficially. I once passed him in the hallway. He didn't flinch. "Adam," he said with a nod like we were equals. I said nothing, because in that moment I knew something dangerous. He wasn't afraid of me. He believed I had no power left. And maybe he was right, but not for long. Back in my home office, I started compiling everything: wire transfers, email records, timeline overlaps. Olivia helped, always quiet, always precise. She never asked personal questions. But when I thanked her, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I've seen how she treats you. You don't deserve that." The first human sentence I'd heard in days. Meanwhile, the ownership documents remained untouched on my desk. Every day I didn't sign them, Clara got more clipped in her tone, colder. But she didn't push. Not directly. Because she didn't want to seem like she was forcing anything. Clara's power wasn't in confrontation. It was in letting you sabotage yourself. Then, one night, I came home late. The house was quiet, but not empty. Clara sat in the living room, cross-legged, a glass of wine in hand. No TV, no phone, just stillness. She looked at me for the first time in days. "You're dragging this out," she said. "You know it's over." "I didn't realize marriage had an expiration date," I replied. Her gaze didn't flicker. "It's not about marriage. It's about relevance. You're not in control anymore, Adam. That scares you." "What scares me," I said, "is how easy this came to you, how calculated." She smiled, barely. "I didn't make you small," she said. "You did that to yourself." She stood up, wine still in hand, and left the room. The silence returned, but this time I didn't sit in it like a prisoner. I got up, went to my office, and opened the folder labeled fail-safes. The war hadn't started, but I had picked a side. His name was everywhere once I started looking for it. Daniel Lang. It sounded harmless, polished, unassuming. But that's how shadows operate. Clean lines on the surface, rot underneath. At first, I found the usual. A LinkedIn page with vague credentials. Consultant, strategic development, partnership builder. Phrases that mean everything and nothing. No listed education, no mutual contacts, no confirmed past clients. Just a string of positions that didn't last more than a year. But one thing stood out. A 3-year gap. A hole. He had vanished. I asked Olivia to dig, not deeply, just carefully. 2 days later, she walked into my office with a USB drive and shut the door behind her. "You didn't get this from me," she said. On it were legal filings, bankruptcy records, lawsuits. Daniel had co-founded a startup 5 years ago, a subscription analytics platform. The name didn't matter. What mattered was the ending. Fraud, embezzlement, internal disputes. He was never formally charged, but the company collapsed in under 18 months. Investors lost everything. And Clara? She had invested in it. Her name was listed as an early-stage silent backer. This wasn't new. This was personal. I stared at the screen for a long time, cold building in my chest. This wasn't just Clara enabling Daniel. This was a second attempt, another play. Only this time the target was bigger, and the weapon was me. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. How long had she been planning this? Was I ever anything more than a stepping stone? That night I didn't go home. I drove, for hours, past the suburbs, into the hills, through towns I hadn't seen since college. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was explosive. I pulled over outside an old diner and just sat in the car. And I remembered. Clara, when we first met, ambitious, sarcastic, razor sharp. She used to talk about legacy like it was a birthright. I wasn't born rich, she once told me, but I'll die powerful. At the time, I thought it was confidence. Now I realized it was a warning. When I returned the next morning, the house was empty. Clara had left early again. A note sat on the counter. Please sign the documents by Friday. We need to move forward. C. She wasn't asking anymore. She was declaring. I tore the note in half. In the office, I called our legal counsel, a man named Bennett whom I trusted back when trust still meant something. I need to schedule a meeting, I said. His tone was cautious. Clara said you were taking time off. I'm back. A pause. I'll see what I can do, he said. Within the hour, Clara appeared at my door. No knock, just presence. You're making a mess, she said, shutting it behind her. I haven't even started. You're paranoid. No, I said. I'm awake. Her eyes narrowed. You think digging into Daniel's past changes anything? You think you'll win some moral high ground? I think fraud is still illegal. She tilted her head. Careful, Adam. If you start a war, you better make sure you don't bleed first. And then she left. It wasn't a threat. It was a forecast. Thursday morning began with silence, not the usual kind. This wasn't the cold shoulder or the void between words at home. This was professional silence, the kind that slithers through office corridors, infects email threads, and twists smiles into warnings. I knew something was wrong before I even opened my laptop. My keycard didn't work on the elevator to the executive floor. I had to take the stairs. Olivia met me halfway up. She didn't say a word, just handed me her phone. The email was short. Effective immediately, Adam Turner will no longer oversee operational duties. All future communications should be routed through the acting CEO, Clara Lang. No call, no meeting, no vote. She made it official. Acting CEO. She hadn't even waited for me to sign the papers. Inside the office, chaos simmered under the surface. Employees avoided my eyes. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. My access to internal files had been restricted. Emails bounced back. I tried to stay composed, sat in my office, opened what few files I still had access to. Half of them were gone. That afternoon, I got a call from our largest client, a healthcare data firm we'd serviced for over 4 years. Adam, the voice said, I just wanted to confirm something. Are you still with the company? What? Well, Clara informed us that you were stepping down permanently. My grip on the phone tightened. I never said that, I replied. A pause, then a sigh. Look, I've always respected you, but we don't get involved in internal disputes. We're pulling out of Q4 negotiations until this is resolved. The line went dead. Minutes later, another call, then another. By 3 o'clock, 4 major contracts were suspended. Revenue losses, team uncertainty, market instability. It was a controlled demolition, and she timed it perfectly. On Friday morning, I found the ownership documents, once again, on the kitchen counter. This time, a pen was placed on top, and beneath the papers was a handwritten note. Do the smart thing. Save your name, if nothing else. C. She wanted me to surrender. Not just legally, but symbolically. She was taking everything and leaving me with the illusion of dignity. But dignity meant nothing if it was built on silence. I took the papers and burned them in the fireplace. Clara didn't say a word when I left that morning. She didn't have to, because she thought I was finished. I went straight to Bennett, my lawyer, showed him the trail, the records, the shell company, Daniel's involvement, the bank statements, Olivia's compiled files. He read in silence for nearly 20 minutes. Then he looked at me. Adam, this is damning. But if she's already consolidated board control, you won't win this inside the company. You'd have to go public, press, legal filings, SEC-level exposure. And what happens if I do? You bring it all down. The company, her reputation, maybe yours too. He paused. But she'd lose the most. I sat back, exhaling slowly. She wanted control, power, public image. She never expected me to risk setting it all on fire. That night, I came home to find Clara waiting in the living room again. This time, no wine, no smile, just her. I assume you saw today's results, she said. I did. Then you know this is over. I think, I replied, it's just beginning. Her lips twitched. Not quite a smirk, not quite fear. You don't have the stomach for war, Adam. You never did. I didn't, I said, but you taught me. She stood, crossed the room, and placed her hand on my chest. You're still in love with me, she whispered. I looked her dead in the eyes. No, I said. I'm in love with the man I used to be. And I'm going to get him back, even if I have to bury everything you built to do it. Her fingers twitched against my shirt. Then she pulled away. This time, it was her turn to be silent. The next morning, I shaved. That might not sound like much. But when you've spent weeks living in a fog of betrayal, numbed by silence and stripped of purpose, standing in front of a mirror and forcing a blade across your own face feels like a battle cry. I looked cleaner, sharper. I looked like someone who still had something to say. By noon, I sat across from my lawyer again. This time, I wasn't just asking questions. I was giving instructions. I want to draft a statement, I told him. One for the press, one for the board, and one for our investors. Bennett raised an eyebrow. You sure about this? If I go quietly, she wins, I said. If I speak first, I take the narrative back. He nodded. Then you need proof, not just suspicion. We need full documentation, and fast. I already had most of it. Olivia had delivered everything with precise timestamps. The flow of funds from our accounts into R&D Advisors, Inc., Daniel's listed ownership, Clara's approval signatures, internal memos showing rapid contract shifts. We packaged it all. That night, I met Marcus Langley, one of our earliest investors, in a downtown restaurant. He was skeptical at first, sipping his whiskey like a man preparing for disappointment. She told us you were unraveling, he said, that you couldn't handle the pressure. She lied, I said, handing him the file. He opened it, read silently for 15 minutes. When he looked up, the warmth in his face was gone. She's bleeding the company, he said, voice low, and doing it with Daniel's help. She's betting no one will call her out. He leaned back. Well, consider her bet lost. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was something, a tremor in the walls she'd built. I left the restaurant with a sense of momentum I hadn't felt in months. But fire spreads faster when it's fueled by betrayal. By Monday morning, Clara knew. I could see it in her face when I walked into the office. Calm, collected, but thinner somehow. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You're very dramatic, Adam, she said, stepping into my path. Dragging investors into our divorce? Not very professional. This isn't about our marriage, I said. It's about fraud. Her mouth tightened. I built this company as much as you did, she snapped. You used it, I replied, to fund a man who already failed once, and dragged you down with him. I won't let him do it again, not through my work. Your work? She repeated. You mean the business I saved when you collapsed? You didn't save it, Clara, I said. You staged a coup. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You want to humiliate me, burn the whole thing down just so you don't have to admit you lost. I stepped closer. No, I said. I want to remind you that you're not untouchable. That day, I sent the first statement to the press. through a trusted outlet. It was clean, factual, and damning. No emotion, no accusations beyond what I could prove. By Tuesday, our investors started calling Clara directly. By Wednesday, 3 board members scheduled an emergency meeting. Without her. By Thursday, Daniel disappeared from the office. Clara stood alone. The house was quiet that night, not empty, but hollow. She didn't speak to me, didn't slam doors, didn't scream. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing, her wine untouched. I watched her from the hallway. This was the woman who took everything. And now she sat there, motionless, as if she finally understood that some bridges, once burned, can never be crossed again. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday. I spent the entire week preparing with Bennett. Paperwork, statements, memos, every email, every account. We built a timeline that couldn't be dismissed. Objective, meticulous. I slept less, ate less, but for once I felt alive. Then Thursday came, and with it a visitor I hadn't expected, Clara's sister, Allison. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. She never liked me much, said I was too quiet for Clara, too measured. Now she stood at my doorstep, holding a manila envelope like it burned her hands. "She's out of control," she said, stepping inside. "You need to see what she's been hiding." I hesitated. "She told you this was about the company," Allison said, "but it wasn't." "Not really." I opened the envelope. Inside were printed pages, old emails, bank statements, photos. There, in black and white, was Clara's communication with a law firm dated over a year ago, a private trust, offshore accounts, a name registered to Lang Strategic Holdings. Daniel's name was only part of it. Clara had funneled money not to steal the company, but to create a new one. Parallel. A full duplicate of our model, our clients, our playbook, all prepared in advance. And the kicker? She planned to launch it without my name anywhere near it. "She said you were too soft," Allison whispered. "That she needed to build something she could call hers." I sat down. She hadn't just tried to take the company. She had tried to erase me from the story. Even the logo design was nearly identical. Just a shift in the color scheme, a new mission statement, a different name on the founding line. Lang Strategic wasn't a betrayal of partnership. It was a rewrite of history. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. Allison paused. "Because I thought she was trying to prove herself, but this is cruelty." I thanked her. She left without another word. That night, I sat in my office and looked at everything. All the work we did. The late nights, the first pitch, the launch party in that terrible rented ballroom. The way Clara used to laugh before meetings, nervous and human. Was that ever real? Or was I just the prototype for what she'd always planned to do alone? When I got to the office the next morning, Clara was already in the boardroom. She wore navy, the same color she'd worn on our wedding day. I wondered if she remembered. She didn't look at me. The board members arrived one by one. Marcus gave me a nod. 2 others avoided Clara's gaze. The others looked unreadable. Then Bennett entered and handed them the evidence packets. It was time. "I want to thank everyone for being here," Clara began, calm and fluid. "There's been confusion in recent weeks, but I want to clarify that all actions taken have been in the best interest of the company." "Is setting up a competing firm in secret part of that?" I asked. Her words stopped mid-air. The room froze. I walked forward and placed Allison's documents beside the board chairman. "Lang Strategic Holdings, set to launch next quarter, with overlapping client targets, stolen IP, and money siphoned from our operating budget. All authorized by Clara Lang." Her face paled. "This is slander," she said. "No," Marcus said, flipping through the pages. "It's betrayal." Another board member chimed in. "Did you really think no one would find out?" Clara looked around the room and realized, for the first time, no one was standing with her. The board called for an internal vote. Clara stood, hands trembling, jaw clenched. "You never deserved this company," she spat at me. "You were too sentimental, too soft. You needed me." "I did," I said, "until I remembered who I was before you." She didn't reply. She left the room without waiting for the vote, and this time, no one followed her. The office was quiet. Not the eerie kind of silence that comes before betrayal. This was the silence that follows a storm, furniture still upright, but the air heavy with the knowledge that nothing was where it had been before. Clara was gone, officially removed. The board had voted unanimously. By Monday morning, her access badges were deactivated, her name scrubbed from the executive directory. I passed by her old private office, still perfectly clean, desk undisturbed, not a single picture left behind. She didn't even take her framed awards, or maybe she didn't want them anymore. The press picked it up fast. There were articles, speculation, recycled quotes, think pieces about toxic power struggles, and gendered ambition. Most didn't even get the story right. They turned it into a corporate drama. But this wasn't a business scandal. This was my life. And now I had to live in what was left of it. I sat at my desk, staring at my inbox. 86 unread emails, half from reporters, the other half from clients who wanted reassurance that everything was stable. What did stability even mean anymore? Olivia came in with a fresh pot of coffee and quietly placed it beside me. "You should take a break," she said, "at least for a few days." "I just got everything back," I muttered. She hesitated. "Did you really want it back?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. That night, I drove home later than usual. The house was dim. Clara hadn't returned, not even to collect her things. She'd moved out in silence, the same way she'd dismantled our marriage, quietly, deliberately, leaving only shadows behind. In the bedroom, her closet was half empty. Dresses still hung on one side, untouched, like ghosts that hadn't been informed they were dead. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I had won. Everyone said it. Bennett, Marcus, even Olivia. "You beat her," they said. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving a fire and realizing you'd been the one holding the match. Later that week, I met with the board again. We discussed restructuring, rebuilding trust, rebranding. "We can turn this around," Marcus said. "We'll show them it's a new era." I nodded, but inside, I couldn't escape the truth. The company wasn't broken because of Clara. It was broken because I trusted someone who was never going to love me more than she loved control. That was the real legacy, and it haunted every corner of this place. I left the meeting early and drove to a beach outside the city. It was windy, cold, off-season, no tourists. I walked to the edge of the water and let the waves crash near my feet. I remembered the first time Clara told me she loved me. We were standing outside a coffee shop, under a flickering neon sign. She said it like a confession. But now, years later, I wondered if it was just her way of securing the next move. One more step in a strategy I never saw unfolding. I wasn't innocent in all of this. I let things slide. I ignored the signs. I thought love meant loyalty, and forgot that some people use love like a weapon. Now I had scars, but at least I knew where they came from, and scars don't lie. Back at the house, a single envelope waited at the front door. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of paper in Clara's handwriting. Just 4 words. "You became him too." No signature, no date. I read it twice, then burned it. Some wars don't end with peace. They end with silence, ashes, and the decision never to look back. I didn't touch the company for a week. Let the board handle it. Let Bennett reply to the press. Let Marcus take the calls. I needed time. Not to rest. That's what people kept suggesting. "Take a vacation, Adam. Clear your head." But rest doesn't fix damage that deep. I didn't need to clear my head. I needed to face what was still inside it. So for the first time in years, I left the city. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just got in the car and drove north, past the edge of reception, through towns with shuttered diners and crooked mailboxes, until I reached a lake I used to visit in college. The cabin was still there, still cheap, still damp, but it held no memories of Clara. That was the point. The first 2 days, I barely spoke. I hiked during the day and sat by the fire at night, my phone turned off in the drawer, and it was in that silence, that long, brutal silence, that I began to remember the man I was before her. Not the businessman, not the CEO, the man who believed in building something, The man who once found purpose in creating, not defending. One morning, I took a notebook from my duffel and flipped through the blank pages. Then, without thinking, I wrote, "If you lose yourself in the war, even victory is defeat." It wasn't profound, but it was honest. By the fourth day, I started writing again. Not contracts, not strategy decks, just thoughts, fragments, things I had pushed down for years in the name of focus, like how I had slowly shaped myself around Clara's expectations, how I let her criticism mold my silence, how I convinced myself that compromise meant love, when it really meant surrender. Somewhere along the way, I had made myself small, and I couldn't blame her for all of it. That was mine to own. When I returned to the city, Olivia met me at the door. "You're different," she said. "I'm awake," I replied. The office was still recovering, but steady. Clara's exit hadn't sunk the ship. If anything, the team had found new footing without her constant tension humming under the surface. There were questions, of course, rumors. But the chaos had cooled. The fire had done its damage. Now came the slow rebuild. I scheduled a full team meeting, not in the boardroom, in the open space, no podium, no projection, just me. I told them the truth, not everything, but enough. I took responsibility where it was mine. I didn't blame Clara. I didn't name Daniel. I didn't make it about villains or victims. I made it about all of us. "We lost our way," I said, "but we still have the foundation, and I'm here to build it with you, not above you." Some of them cried. Others just nodded. But every person in that room stayed when it was over. No one walked out. Later that week, Olivia stopped by my office. She handed me a file. "What's this?" I asked. "New applicants for the development director position." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't post that yet." "You didn't have to," she said. "People heard you were back, and they want to be part of your company again." For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not for appearances, not for press, just because I meant it. The knock came just after 7. I was still in the office, finishing a late call with a potential investor when Olivia peeked in. "You've got a visitor," she said cautiously. I gestured toward the door. "Tell them to schedule something. I'm wrapping up." "It's Daniel," she said flatly. The room went silent. I put the phone down. He stood in the hallway like nothing had happened. Same polished shoes, same tailored blazer, same smug detachment behind his eyes. "Adam," he said, like we were old colleagues who'd lost touch, not combatants in a corporate bloodbath. I didn't offer a handshake. "Why are you here?" I asked. He looked around the office before stepping in. "Relax. I'm not here to make a scene. You missed your chance months ago." He didn't respond, just sat down across from me and let the silence sit between us like a wall of glass. Then he spoke. "She cut me out too." I waited. She was supposed to run the new firm with me. That was the plan. Until she changed it. "You mean until she betrayed you?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "She always said you were too emotional," he muttered. "But you held the company together longer than I thought you would." "She underestimated me," I said. "No, she underestimated herself." I stared at him. Daniel leaned forward. "I'm not here to apologize. You wouldn't believe it anyway. I just need you to know, she wasn't always like this. She changed. She became who she always was," I replied. "You just helped bring it out." He didn't deny it. There was a tiredness to him now. Less polished, less sure. "I lost everything too," he said. "My name's ruined in tech circles. No one wants to hire the guy who helped tank Turner and Lang." "You didn't tank it," I said. "We survived." He smiled, bitter. "You did." A long silence followed. Then he stood up. "I just thought you should hear it from me. She never planned to stay with me either. I was a tool. So were you. But I think you were the one she hated loving." That struck something raw. Before I could answer, he was already walking to the door. "Good luck, Adam," he said. "Try not to become her in the rebuild." He left without another word. I sat still for a long time. I didn't know what bothered me more, that he was right about Clara, or that he might have been right about me. That night, I walked home instead of driving. Cold air filled my lungs. Streetlights flickered above like muted stars. The world felt quieter than usual, like it was watching. When I got back, there was another envelope waiting. This time, no handwriting, just a printed report. Lang Strategic Holdings, dissolved. The shell company Clara had tried to build, officially dead, buried. It should have brought peace, but closure never feels like justice, only like breath after drowning. The next morning, Olivia brought coffee to my desk. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm not hiding from it anymore." She nodded. "Then you're doing better than most." We got to work. She sent the message through Olivia. Just a date, time, and location. A small cafe on the west side. No name, no context. I stared at it for a long time before replying. 1 hour, that's all. I didn't know what I was walking into. An apology? A confession? One last game? But something in me needed to see her. Not for closure. Not even for peace. Just to prove to myself that I could look her in the eyes and still be me. When I arrived, she was already there. She chose the table in the corner, back to the wall, facing the door, always aware of exits, always calculating. She wore black, simple, elegant, no jewelry. I hadn't seen her in over 2 months, but she looked the same. Tired, maybe, but sharp as ever. "Adam," she said almost warmly. I sat down without a word. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The hum of the cafe filled the space between us, cups clinking, low music, the occasional cough or laugh from the counter. Finally, she said, "You look well?" "Better than I did last time you saw me." She gave a quiet nod. "I read the press," she added. "You handled it, gracefully. You expected revenge?" "I expected fire. I gave you silence. It hurt more." Her eyes didn't flinch. "I deserved worse," she said. I waited. "Then why are we here?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I guess I needed to see if you hated me." "I don't," I said simply. She looked surprised. "I'm not sure if that's better or worse," she whispered. I leaned back. I spent a long time trying to understand why. Why destroy something we built together? Why erase me from it? Why Daniel? Why everything? She didn't answer immediately. Then she looked me in the eye, and for once, for the first time in years, I didn't see power. I saw guilt. "I didn't start out planning to ruin you," she said. "I just stopped believing in us. And then I started believing I was the only one who deserved anything." "And Daniel?" She shook her head. "A distraction, a weapon. I thought if I could build something without you, I'd prove I was never the weak one." "You weren't weak," I said. "You were just cruel." That landed. She blinked hard but didn't cry. "I hated how much of myself I gave to you," she admitted. "And I hated how easily you gave yours to me." "I thought that's what love was," I said. "It is," she replied. "Just not the kind I knew how to keep." Silence again. Outside, it started to rain. She slid a small envelope across the table. "No letters this time," I said. "It's not a letter." Inside was a photo. Us, 5 years ago, at the lake house, our wedding day. She looked radiant. I looked proud. Both of us holding hands like we meant it. "I don't want it anymore," she said, "but I don't want to throw it away either." I folded it and placed it in my jacket pocket. She stood. "I won't contact you again." "I know." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth," she said without turning back, "I did love you. I just didn't know how to stop needing to win." And then she was gone. I didn't move for a while. The photo in my pocket felt heavier than it should have. She hadn't come for forgiveness, and I hadn't given it. But that was okay. Some endings don't come with absolution, just acknowledgement. Bennett came into my office with a folder under his arm. "I wasn't going to bring this to you," he said, "but you need to know." He placed the folder on the desk. "What is it?" I asked. "Proof," he said. of what she did after Lang's strategic was dissolved. I opened it slowly. More emails. Internal memos. Clara had quietly approached 3 smaller firms in the months following her removal, trying to license technology she didn't own. Some of the code was ours, proprietary, untouched. But she had claimed authorship, hoping her name still held weight in certain circles. It didn't. But legally, it was theft. "She's being watched," Bennett said. "By the state, by the patent office. But if you push it, if you go public with this, it ends her." My throat tightened. Ends her how? No executive board would touch her. No startup would accept her name. No investor would look twice. She's already radioactive. This would bury her in concrete. I leaned back. What happens if I don't? Bennett shrugged. She fades, quietly. Maybe she moves, changes industries, reinvents herself. And if I do? He paused. She disappears completely. For hours after he left, I stared at the folder. It wasn't about justice anymore. That had already happened. This was about something else entirely. Pride? Power? Pain? I tried to remember the last time revenge actually made someone feel clean. I couldn't. I left the office early. Drove through the city without direction until I found myself at the edge of the old industrial district, where the company had started years ago. The first warehouse we rented. The place where Clara and I hung whiteboards and argued about margins and marketing and mission statements. It was abandoned now. I stepped out of the car and stared at the rusted gate, the peeling paint. Once, this had been our beginning. Now, it was nothing. I thought about all the times I could have burned her publicly, all the sound bites I could have dropped, the people who would have loved to watch her fall further. I thought about the pain, how real it was, how sharp. And I thought about what Olivia said the week before, when I told her about the meeting with Clara. "You're not the kind of man who ruins someone just because you can," she said. And maybe she was right, because what Clara had taken, I'd already reclaimed. Not the company, myself. I drove back to the office and burned the folder. Bennett called me that evening. "You sure?" he asked. "You're letting her walk away with no consequences." "No," I said. "She has to live with herself. That's the consequence." He didn't argue. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with a scotch and the cold spring wind against my face. Below, the city moved on, slowly, indifferently. I didn't need to be a destroyer. Not anymore. I had survived betrayal. I had endured humiliation. I had lost my wife, my trust, my version of the truth. But I had won something else. Clarity. And in a world that thrives on noise, clarity is rare and priceless. Spring came late that year. The city had thawed slowly, as if reluctant to believe winter had finally loosened its grip. But it came, and with it, something softer in the air. I walked to work now. No driver, no black SUV, no tinted windows. Just me, a coffee in hand, the morning wind brushing past my jacket, and the weight of nothing on my shoulders. Not guilt, not anger, just space. The company had stabilized. We were rebuilding. New talent, new direction, cleaner culture. The board backed the changes. The investors returned. The team grew tighter, less politics, more purpose. People no longer whispered when I walked the floor. They smiled. Olivia had been promoted. She now handled operations, with a sharpness that reminded me of the best parts of Clara, without the venom. She never said much about the past, but her presence carried a message. Loyalty doesn't need noise. One Friday afternoon, I found her waiting by my door. "You've got someone here," she said. "Another investor?" She shook her head. "No, someone not asking for anything." I looked up. A boy, maybe 19, stood near the elevator, holding a portfolio case like it was too big for his hands. Nervous. New. He handed me a resume, shaking slightly. I don't have a college degree," he said, "but I saw your video about starting with nothing. And I thought maybe—" I smiled. "You thought maybe you could start too?" He nodded. I took the folder. "Come in, let's talk." We sat for 20 minutes. He told me about his parents, his side jobs, the way he stayed up at night watching tutorials, teaching himself to code. He reminded me of someone, not Clara, not Daniel, not me. When he left, I sat alone in my office and looked at the photo I'd tucked in my drawer. The lake house wedding, still crisp, still untouched. I didn't take it out often, but I didn't throw it away either. Some memories don't need to be rewritten, just understood. That night, I took the long way home, past the bookstore Clara used to love, the bar where we had our first fight, the apartment where we lived before everything went high-rise and boardrooms. The city didn't feel like a graveyard anymore. It felt like a beginning. At home, I poured a drink, not to numb anything, just to mark the end. Then I picked up my phone, typed a message. Dinner next week? Your call. No pressure. A. I sent it. Not to Clara, not to Allison, not to Bennett, to Olivia. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew it wasn't about escape, or rescue, or even romance. It was about seeing what happens when you build something without fear. Not fast, not perfect, just real. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man trying to win. I felt like a man who had already won, because I was still standing, and I was free.